Imagine a world where China and Rome, two empires thousands of miles apart, were secretly connected without even knowing each other's languages. A world where silk traveled through deadly deserts, mountains, and empires long before airplanes or ships existed. Sounds unbelievable, right? But this actually happened. This is the true story of the Silk Road, humanity's first global network, and it didn't just trade goods. It spread religions, ideas, and even pandemics. Stay with me for the next few minutes, because what you're about to hear will change the way you think about globalization forever. Today, when we think of globalization, we imagine container ships, airplanes, or the internet. But the truth is, globalization began more than 2,000 years ago. The Silk Road was not one single road, but a massive web of trade routes that connected the East and the West. It began in China during the Han Dynasty and stretched all the way to the Mediterranean. For centuries, it allowed silk, spices, gold, and knowledge to travel between empires that had never met. But it wasn't just about business. It was about the exchange of entire civilizations. And just like the internet today, it brought both opportunity and danger. So how did this incredible network begin? Who controlled it, and what made it disappear? The story begins in the 2nd century BC during the Han Dynasty in China. Emperor Wu was facing a serious problem. Nomadic tribes from the north were constantly raiding Chinese settlements. To solve this, he sent a brave diplomat named Chang'an on a mission to find allies in the west. Chang'an's journey was epic. He was captured for 10 years by nomads, escaped, and kept going further west into Central Asia. What he found amazed him: powerful kingdoms, fertile lands, and most importantly, the legendary Fergana horses. These horses were so strong and fast that the Chinese believed they were heavenly. Although Zhang's diplomatic mission failed, his discoveries changed everything. China realized that a vast world existed beyond its borders, a world worth connecting with. This led to the birth of the Silk Road, a massive trade network that crossed the Taklamakan Desert, the Pamir Mountains, and endless valleys. It wasn't a single road, but a collection of paths used by merchants, monks, and explorers. Along the way were oasis cities like Dunhuang, Samarkand, and Bukhara. These cities became vibrant melting pots of culture, language, and religion. The Chinese exported silk, porcelain, paper, and tea. In return, they imported gold, glassware, spices, horses, and precious stones. But the most valuable things were invisible knowledge, ideas, religions, and technologies. Buddhism traveled from India to China through this road. Paper spread from China to the Middle East and Europe. Even musical instruments and artistic styles were exchanged. In short, the Silk Road became the world's first global communication system. But the Silk Road wasn't a fairy tale. It was a brutal and dangerous journey. Merchants risked their lives to cross burning deserts where temperatures reached 50 degrees Celsius. The Taklamakan Desert's name literally means go in and you won't come out. In the high Pamirs and Hindu Kush, freezing winds and thin oxygen made survival nearly impossible. One mistake could mean death. And even if you survived nature, you had to face human threats, bandits, warlords, and corrupt officials. Despite all these risks, people continued to travel. Why? Because the profits were enormous. A single roll of Chinese silk could be sold in Rome for its weight in gold. In fact, Roman women became obsessed with silk. The demand grew so high that the Roman Senate once tried to ban silk, calling it immoral and un-Roman, but the ban failed. The more they tried to stop it, the more people wanted it. But there was another hidden conflict. The Silk Road wasn't controlled by a single empire. It passed through dozens of kingdoms, tribes, and cultures. The Parthians in Persia controlled key sections and taxed merchants heavily. The Kushan Empire linked India to Central Asia. The Sogdians became legendary middlemen, mastering multiple languages and building vast trade networks. Each empire wanted a piece of the profit. Then came the Mongols. At first, they were feared as destroyers. Genghis Khan and his armies burned cities and crushed kingdoms. But once they conquered most of Eurasia, they realized something: powerful trade meant wealth. They built roads, introduced a passport system, and guaranteed safety for merchants. For the first time, a trader could travel from China to Europe under a single authority. This period, called the Pax Mongolica, became the golden age of the Silk Road. Even Marco Polo, the famous Venetian traveler, journeyed across this route and returned with incredible stories about Chinese cities, paper money, and coal. His book inspired generations of European explorers. But this golden age had a dark side. In the 14th century, the Black Death, a deadly plague, spread along these very trade routes. It killed millions across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Trade slowed down, cities emptied, and fear replaced curiosity. The very road that connected humanity also became the road of death. So what do we really know about the Silk Road? Historians and archaeologists have discovered fascinating evidence along its path. In caves near Dunhuang, China, thousands of manuscripts and paintings were found showing Buddhist monks, foreign merchants, and maps of ancient routes. In Central Asia, ancient Sogdian letters written by traders talk about political instability, broken trade routes, and desperate attempts to survive. Coins from Rome have been discovered in Chinese tombs. Chinese silk has been found in Egyptian mummies. These physical pieces of evidence prove that trade reached across continents. But historians are still debating some key questions. One theory suggests that the Silk Road was less about one long journey and more about many small transactions. A Chinese merchant didn't travel all the way to Rome. Instead, goods changed hands dozens of times. Silk from China might be traded to a Sogdian, then to a Persian, then to an Arab, then to a Roman. In this way, the road was a relay system rather than a single highway. Another theory is that the Silk Road wasn't just one land route. Maritime routes called the Maritime Silk Road were equally important. Ships carried goods from Chinese ports to Southeast Asia, India, the Persian Gulf, and even East Africa. These sea routes were faster and could carry more cargo. Some scholars argue that maritime trade actually surpassed land trade during certain periods. There's also a debate about why the Silk Road declined. Was it the Black Death? Was it the rise of maritime empires like Portugal and Spain? Or was it the collapse of the Mongol Empire, which had kept the road secure? Most likely, it was a combination of all three. When Europeans discovered sea routes to India and China, they no longer needed to risk crossing deserts and mountains. Ships were faster, cheaper, and safer. Slowly, the ancient trade cities lost their importance. Samarkand, once a jewel of the Silk Road, became a ghost of its former self. But even though the physical routes declined, the cultural and intellectual connections never fully disappeared. Languages, cuisines, religions, and technologies that spread during the Silk Road era continue to shape civilizations for centuries. So what does the story of the Silk Road teach us today? First, it proves that globalization is not new. Humans have always been curious, always willing to take risks to connect with others, to learn, to trade, and to grow. The Silk Road was humanity's first experiment in global connection. It showed us the best and worst of what happens when the world becomes connected: incredible innovation, cultural exchange, and economic growth, but also disease, conflict, and inequality. And second, it reminds us that no civilization grows in isolation. China, India, Persia, Arabia, and Europe all shaped one another through this invisible web. Even today, when you wear a T-shirt made in Bangladesh, use a phone designed in California and assembled in China, or cook food with spices from India, you are continuing the same pattern. The Silk Road may be gone, but its spirit lives on in the globalized world we inhabit. If you found this story fascinating, imagine how many other forgotten connections shaped our world. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video, because history is full of stories that deserve to be told. And this was just one of them.